769-1925, extension 100, or info@talklinenetwork.com.
This is your number one station. Did you know we're on Twitter too? Connect with us there and get involved.
You're listening to Talkline with Zev Brenner, America's premier Jewish broadcast, on the air since 1981.
And now, here's your host.
Welcome back to the program. I'm Zev Brenner. To Jerusalem we go. Our guest splits his time between Jerusalem, between Muncie, New York, and he's written, this is his fourth book that he's written, but he was a rabbi for 20 years for Aish HaTorah. He was involved in outreach, and he decided he wanted to make lots of money. And his latest book is called Living Dangerously, My Struggle to Get Rich Without Losing My Soul. His previous books include Powerful Prayers, co-authored with Larry King, How to Get Your Prayers Answered, and The Words Can Heal Handbook, but nothing compares to, of course, his decision to try to become a multimillionaire and without selling his soul. Welcome back to the program, Rabbi Irwin Katsof. Thank you for joining us.
Great to see you, Zev. Good evening to you. It's good morning here in Jerusalem.
It's actually morning here.
Oh, that's true.
In the United States, too. So I know you go back and forth, so you're aware of that. So I want to begin. Now, you grew up in a household where you had some Jewish identity. Didn't really go to shul that often, right? You went maybe twice a year, Rosh Hashanah, Yom Kippur.
Right. I grew up in Montreal, and even though we were not Orthodox, I'd say we were Reform, if anything. But most of the people in Canada, at least, or in Montreal, belonged to Orthodox synagogues. There were very few Reform, maybe one Reform and one or two conservative shuls. So we'd drive Rosh Hashanah, drive home. We would eat. It was true. We had a whole mix. We would not bring pork into the house, but we would definitely go out for Chinese food. And who knows?
You're right. You had two sets of dishes in your house, but you brought pork into your home. You ate it on paper plates, right?
Exactly. Not that it was actually very, milk and meat. Everything was washed together, mixed together, but there was a separation of sorts.
So you were, in a sense, rebelling against it. You went to a Jesuit college, and you became one of the leaders of some of the organizations in the Jesuit college, right?
All my friends went off to McGill University, and for some strange reason, I suppose there was a sense of rebellion. I chose Loyola College, which was a great school if you were an Irish Catholic Jesuit, and if your father and grandfather went there. But not for a little, a young Jewish boy who really had never known anyone not Jewish. I went to the Protestant School Board of Greater Montreal, so I didn't go to a parochial school or a Jewish school, but everyone was Jewish. On Rosh Hashanah, it closed down. I can still remember the first time I sat down next to the one non-Jew in the high school, and he had a hamburger with a glass of milk, and I had never really seen such a thing. My stomach turned. So I went off to Loyola, and I mean, it's strange to understand how it could be, but I ran for president of the Loyola Students Association at a time that Loyola was merging with Concordia University. Because of the preponderance of French-speaking people in Quebec, they were minimizing, kind of shrinking and limiting the English-speaking colleges. So my college, Loyola, Irish Catholic Jesuit, merged with Concordia. And I ran under the slogan of preserving Loyola's identity. And what did a good little Jewish boy from Côte St. Luc, also known as Côte St. Jew, know about the Irish Catholic identity? I have no idea. I didn't really know much, but I won. And then when I graduated from there, I even won the Father Patrick G. Malone Medal for outstanding community involvement. Also quite ironic.
You still have the medal?
I actually do. When we were packing up things to move, part of our belongings from Muncie, New York to Jerusalem, I found a little box in my cupboard with this little medal and a picture of me with Father Patrick Malone.
So how did you end up from there becoming a rabbi and really being involved in outreach?
Wow. So this is, I left home in 1978 to go on what I told everyone was going to be a 4-year journey around the world. I was going to spend a year in Europe, and then the Jesuits gave me a job teaching for them in an orphanage in Darjeeling, India. I think they just wanted to get me as far away from Loyola as
They want to get, figure they won't see you again if you go to India.
Right. We don't know who this Katsof kid is, but we don't want him around. So I spent a year in Europe, which people did at that time, hitchhiking, and I lived as a shepherd in the hills of Crete, and I taught English in Barcelona, and I was waiting for my visa to come through, because you could only get in for a month at a time into Darjeeling, northern India at the time. And I was having a difficult time getting it, and I was getting burned out and tired. And so I figured, you know what? As a teenager, I'd gone on a BBYO trip to Israel.
That's
I'll go back there.
Organization, for those that don't know.
Right. Sorry about that. Yeah. And so I figured, okay, I'll go back. And I had heard about this school called Aish HaTorah that took secular adults and arranged study programs for them. I had no interest in becoming Orthodox. It was not even on the radar. But I was a psychologist. My degree was in psychology. And I figured I'll spend a year in Asia understanding what the Buddhists and Hindus have to say about God. And so why not also go to Israel and see what the Jews have to say? I am a Jew. And I remember learning about Carl Jung, who was a student of Freud and built a whole school of psychoanalysis, that he felt that he never found someone who he couldn't help heal by not getting them, without getting them in touch with their spiritual roots. So I figured, look, I'm a Jew. I may as well go see what the Jews have to say. But, to me, all roads led to Rome. It didn't make a difference. Judaism, Hinduism, Buddhism. So I got on a plane and I went to Jerusalem, and I walked in and I said, hey, I want to learn a little bit about what the Jews have to say about the soul. I was pretty chutzpahdik. And I had long hair. I'd been traveling for a year. They looked at me and they really weren't sure if they could even accept me in, but they did. And I was touched very deeply by Rabbi Noah Weinberg, the Rosh Hashiva, Zichrono Livracha. And I saw here was a man who really understood life and had really brilliant insights about living. And it wasn't, it's where, that he sat me down and said, okay, put on tefillin, go and daven. We talked ideas, we talked concepts. What do the Jewish people have to teach about how to get meaning in life, how to have a meaningful marriage, a marriage where you stay married, how to connect with your children, how to connect with your deeper self. And that touched me because I was a searcher. Eventually, I began to see, oh, this is what Torah is about. It's really about how to live in integrity and in connection with God and with your deeper self, with your soul. And and then his idealism. I had always been an idealist. I'd run for president of Loyola. I had, I wanted to make a difference in the world. I never, though, imagined it could be through a Jewish pathway. And he saw me that it could. He showed me that it could be.
So you got to be involved with Aish HaTorah. You were a fundraiser for them. You went to LA. You went to other places too. You were there for 20 years. So what happened? You said, you know what? I'm tired of making a meager salary. I want to make it big. I want a car. I want a house. I want a swimming pool. I want to make big money, right?
Well, it was subtle, but it's a slippery path. Yes. I in Los Angeles, I was fortunate. A gentleman named Dick Horowitz, who was a very, very special individual, an idealist, a big thinker, a tremendous Baal Tzedakah, charitable. He was our board president, and I knew nothing about raising money. I'd never done it. He brought me into his office, put his desk right next to his desk, and for the first 2 years or so, I would make a call, and then they'd ask me a question. Why should I give to Aish HaTorah? How are you different? Or, what do you want? And I say, 1 minute, please. I put them on hold and I say, Dick, what do I say? And he would jump on the line and we would, he would teach me how to connect with people and how to raise money for Aish. And we hired different consultants as well who helped us along the way. But it's Rabbi Weinberg had a shita, an approach to working with his staff. He said the rabbis should come back to Jerusalem once every 3 years in order to get reconnected to the source. He said, but the fundraisers really probably need to come back every year to get reconnected to what the big picture is. Because when you're dealing with people with money and accomplishment and success, it's a slippery slope. You start to lose connection.
You came across some very wealthy people. And when you were fundraising for Aish HaTorah, billionaires, oligarchs, the whole group of people who had fortunes. So you said to yourself at some point, I think it was 2005, you left Aish HaTorah, you said, I want this lifestyle. I want to make this kind of money. I want to make millions of dollars so I can give $1 million at tzedakah, but I want to have $4 or $5 million or more, right?
That's true. It never happened, but
you came close. So you met some of the people you met in Aish HaTorah, you actually approached them. And what was your scheme? How did you think you were going to make all this money?
Well, I had lots of plans. I connected with some of the major donors to Aish, and we set up a broker dealer. So I actually went and studied to get my Series 7 so that I could work in securities. Our first project was to go in and build a big planned community of 1,000 homes in Odessa on the Black Sea in Ukraine. And we raised capital for it. We're in the arranged loans. And then the financial crisis of 2008, 7 and 8 hit, and everything fell apart. But we spent 3 years, 4 years working on that. So I'd say I had a lot of, or we as a team had a lot of ideas, but what I began to see, they say, man proposes, God disposes. Right?
Gott lacht.
Right. So all the things that I wanted to do and set out to do, actually, after a lot of effort, fell apart. And I think, I talk about that in Living Dangerously. I think that one of the really important lessons for me was it's not me. And Rabbi Weinberg had always taught us that. Yes, I have to make the effort. I have to put in the time. I have to think about what I'm going to do. But ultimately, it's really God's will. And that was brought home to me over and over and over, which I think is kind of a lot of the lessons I learned in terms of not losing my soul, that I really did think it was me. I'm as smart as these guys who are worth hundreds of millions and billions. If they can do it, why can't I? Right? If they can get rich, I can get rich. And I don't want to live in a little rented apartment, right? And drive a 10-year-old Toyota,
And you wanted the swimming pools, the mansions.
Right.
Now, you initially you mortgaged your house. You put in about $700,000+.
I mortgaged and remortgaged and refinanced everything I had, and I was living on the edge. And I would tell anyone who's thinking of going out and starting a business to be much more cautious than I am. I have my 2.5 rule, which everything takes twice as long, costs twice as much, and you make half as much as you ever thought you would. So go slowly. Make sure you have 18 months at least. Some people say 12 months. My experience would be 18 months in the bank before you jump off on your own. There's nothing wrong with being rich as Jews, right? We enjoy the world, enjoy the abundance that God sends you. Use it as a tool to give to others and to help your community and your family and your loved ones and the Jewish people. But remember that it's ultimately coming from God. And that lesson came to me over and over and over, because everything I tried to do fell apart. And then
did anything ever go through? I know you came very close a couple of times. Anything ever come through where you had a big hit?
None of the deals that we actually worked on in our broker-dealer came through. They came very close.
You
And we
didn't have a
spent-
rabbi davening for you, praying. He made a deal that if you made the money, you were going to give $850,000 to his yeshiva in Israel.
I see you read the book and took good notes. I'm impressed. We did, and we worked very closely with Rabbi Zilberman from Adaris Eliyahu in the old city of Jerusalem, and he we would consult with him and
And
meet
every
with
time
him.
he was making a deal, he said, Rabbi Silver, daven harder for me, right? Pray harder for me.
I called often and said, "We're at the finish line. We're in the red zone. We need your help." And he'd send a bunch of Bachrim, a bunch of his students down to the hotel to daven for us. We came very close, but in the end, none of the actual deals that we worked on came through. And the truth is, when I look back in retrospect, it's all for the good. Imagine if we had built a 1,000-home community in Odessa on the Black Sea. Where would we be today with what's going on in Ukraine?
Well, some of the people that you dealt with were multimillionaires, Hollywood legends. They ended up getting into serious financial trouble. Had you been successful with them, you would have been caught up in that too, right?
We could have gone down with them. Many of them, unfortunately, today have ended up, some in prison, some bankrupt. Yes, so when I look back at it, I say, thank God. And at the time, I was, just felt horrible. I couldn't, there were times when I couldn't get out of bed for a few days. Right? But once again, God did provide for me in other ways that I never expected. And I look back today and I say, I don't have the wealth that I ever imagined, but by going after it, and I did have some success, right? But not the kind of wealth that I wanted. But I really am a blessed man. I'm here in Jerusalem. I have all 8 of our children have now moved to Israel. I have 3 of them on the street with me. I have a whole slew of grandchildren all around. What I learned from that, yes, I got tired of being poor.
But how long did it take you to realize that you, in your pursuit for the almighty dollar, that maybe there was something more to life? How many years did it take you?
I left Aish in 2005. We're now 2025. In 2012, I hit a wall. So after 7 years, I hit a wall. I had gotten some success from things I never imagined. Some oligarchs hired me to do projects for them. Things I didn't go into business. So I finally got some money. I had a house finally. I had a nice car, but I was miserable. So in 2012, I really hit a wall. That was after 7 years. Since then, I've done a lot of work on myself. I started in Jungian analysis, and then I went to something called core energetics, and then Hakomi. I'd say it took 15 years of a lot of pain, a lot of anxiety, a lot of nervousness, where I finally had to say, come to groups and say, what's really important? Of course, I want to be able to pay my bills, and it's nice to have some luxury in one's life.
You were like almost close to $1 million worth of debt, right? At some point.
At least I had around $250,000 of credit card debt at that point, and another $600,000-700,000 of other, debt on my home and loans people I had borrowed money from. And I'm still paying some of that back today.
Wow. Our guest is Rabbi Irwin Gabriel Katsof. His book is called Living Dangerously, My Struggle to Get Rich Without Losing My Soul. And he shuttles between Jerusalem and Rockland County. And he's president of TradeMissions.org, which in cooperation with U.S. Department of Commerce organizes trade missions to foreign countries for American alternative asset fund managers. We're going to be right back. Don't go away. Stay tuned. If you'd like to join in our conversation, by the way, our numbers are 212-769-1925, 212-769-1925. You want to email? Great way to get your questions answered. Zev@talklinenetwork.com, Zev@talklinenetwork.com. We're going to be right back. Don't go away. Stay tuned. This is the Talkline Network. Dreaming of a home or investment in Jerusalem or Ramat Shemesh? Realistic Realty turns that dream into a smart, achievable reality. We buy in bulk before properties hit the market, so you get exclusive access at below market prices. Even if you're not an Israeli citizen, we secure great low mortgage rates up to 90% and handle the financial legwork for you. Whether it's your first home or vacation escape or helping your kids settle, we've got you covered with pre-sale and built apartment options, free financial investment planning, personalized guidance, but feels more like a trusted friend than a pushy agent. Why rent when you can own? Turn your monthly payments into equity and your vision into value. Call Aaron Rietti for your personalized consultation at 929-653-4211. That's 929-653-4211, or you can email realisticrealtyar@gmail.com. Realistic Realty, making Israel feel like home.
Hey, what's up, everybody? Anthony D'Esposito, former congressman, side by side with New York State Assemblyman Ari Brown. And this is the of Anthony and Ari Unfiltered, where we will talk about everything and anything that's going on in the world today. Kid from Franklin Square, the guy from Island Park, we are truly going to be unfiltered.
Tune in every Thursday night at 7 p.m. on Zev Brenner's Talkline Network, WSNR 620 AM, WNEW 102.7 FM HD3, and streaming at talklinenetwork.com. When former Congressman Anthony D'Esposito, Inspector General of the Department of Labor, and Assemblyman Ari Brown tackle hot-button issues with sharp minds and even sharper tongues. Warning: may contain strong opinions, mild sarcasm, and the occasional political zinger.
Podcasts are everywhere, but cutting through the noise is tough. Did you know of the 5 million podcasts worldwide? Half of them only get 30 listeners? Want to reach a bigger audience? Think radio. Talkline Network gets you targeted listeners who are ready to engage with your message. Host your own show with us and supercharge your podcast's reach. We'll help you connect with the right audience. For a free consultation, call Talkline Network today at 212-769-1925, extension 100. That's 212-769-1925, or email zevbrenner@gmail.com. That's 212-769-1925, extension 100.
Imagine escaping the winter cold for 7 nights of luxury, sunshine, and world-class kosher cuisine at the stunning 5-star Renaissance Panama City Hotel. This is Panama Yeshiva Week 2026. From January 18th to 25th, Go Beyond invites you to join over 150 Jewish families from around the globe for an unforgettable vacation packed with adventure, relaxation, and community. Tour the Panama Canal, zipline through rainforests, meet monkeys on Monkey Island, and unwind on pristine beaches with all transportation and guides included. Enjoy gourmet glad kosher meals, kosher bar and tea room, a full-time mashgiach, and the culinary highlight of the week, Kosher Fest Gala. Whether you're a solo traveler, couple, or large family, custom pricing makes it affordable for everyone. Group airfare from NYC starts at just $499, baggage included. Don't wait, spaces are filling fast. Call 347-307-2677 or visit PanamaYeshivaWeek.com to get your personalized quote today. Early bird pricing ends soon. And who knows, you might even be interviewed live on Talkline with Zev Brenner while soaking up the sun in Panama. Panama Yeshiva Week 2026. Go beyond the vacation. Call Go Beyond now at 347-307-2677. That's 347-307-2677.
Deal Estate Israel, your go-to source for below-market and unbeatable real estate deals in Israel. From auctions and bankruptcies to exclusive off-market listings, they deliver the best deals and guide you through every step of the journey, start to finish.
This week's featured Deal Jerusalem Estates. Discover a rare opportunity to own a luxurious 4-bedroom apartment on the 3rd floor of one of Jerusalem's most prestigious residences. Featuring high-end finishes, meticulous design, and an expansive balcony, partially covered, partially open, perfect for relaxing or entertaining. It comes fully furnished and move-in ready. Includes private parking, a storage unit, and more. Available now exclusively through Deal Estate Israel at below-market pricing. Call or WhatsApp 917-523-1405 now. That's 917-523-1405 or visit dealstateisrael.com to learn more. Own in Jerusalem. Save with Deal Estate.
This is your number one station.
You're listening to Talkline with Zev Brenner, America's premier Jewish broadcast on the air since 1981.
And now, here's your host.
And we're back. Rabbi Irwin Katsof. His book is called Living Dangerously, My Struggle to Get Rich Without Losing My Soul. He spent 20 years as a fundraiser at Aish HaTorah and decided he wanted it all. But he met the richest people, millionaires, billionaires, and he decided that would be his lifestyle. Let me ask you this. I found fascinating. You had a skill, and it was almost like for Herschel Estropolis' story, where you would take two individuals and somehow get both of them to agree. For example, you got the King of Jordan to agree to an event with Michael Richards, who played Kramer and Seinfeld. You didn't have commitments from either one of them, but somehow you got them all together. And I know you had other situations with President Bill Clinton and others. Tell us about that. That's certainly a very big knack.
Oh my goodness. I wish I could tell you about that. It's a blessing I have. I talk about a little bit in the book about something I call a bahag, which is a big, hairy, audacious goal. Right? My bahag. And a tool that I have.
That's almost like a fast thing. Bahag, right?
So I think it's, as business people, we get often caught up in the urgent instead of the important. So whatever is like kind of demanding my attention right now, what is most urgent, I do. And I just get all caught up in that and focus versus kind of taking a step back, trying to settle in and say, okay, the urgent is there. It's going to be there later today and tomorrow. But what is really important might not be urgent, but it's going to make a huge difference if we can get that. And I was fortunate. I had some mentors who really helped me acquire that skill and implement it in my day-to-day. So, how we wanted to do a banquet in Los Angeles, but we wanted to step outside of what everyone else was doing. So we said, what can we do to really make a difference here, to get noticed? And then we came up with the idea at the time of Schindler's List, let's get Steven Spielberg. We created an award that we presented to him, but we said we need someone who would be the best person to do it. So we brainstormed, said, let's get President Clinton. Okay? So it was by stepping back and setting the goal, getting out of the urgent and the hamster wheel of running around and chasing your tail, that we came up with big ideas. And I believe that if you take the time to do that, the Almighty will help you.
But how'd you pull it off? Because you didn't have a commitment from Spielberg, you didn't have a commitment from President Bill Clinton, but you each intimated to the other one that you participate in this event, even though you didn't have a commitment from either one.
God's hand. We were very lucky.
You got nervous because Steven Spielberg and President Bill Clinton got together, right?
Right.
And
so
you were afraid the whole thing was going to blow in your face.
We approached Steven Spielberg and said, we'd like to present the King David Award to you for your work on Schindler's List, and we'll arrange for President Clinton to present the award. Steven said yes, so then we went to President Clinton. And while we were waiting for his response, word came out in the LA Times that Clinton was flying to LA and was spending the weekend at Spielberg's house. And then I spent the whole Shabbat expecting the CIA or the Secret Service to come FBI knocking on my door to arrest me for telling Spielberg that we had Clinton. And I said, oh my goodness, they're spending time together. We're finished. But right after that, his office sent us an email saying he agreed to present the award. So I think it's really a matter of setting big goals. And it was the same thing where we launched Help Our People Know, which was an international satellite broadcast to focus on the plight at that time of the Jews in the former Soviet Union before, before the Soviet breakup of the Soviet Union, before there was freedom of religion. And we attempted to do this broadcast and it was failing. And then someone bumped into Larry King. And Larry's real name is Label Zeiger, Ukrainian Russian roots. And they asked him if he would meet with me. And we went up there and we said, Larry, would you host this broadcast for us? And he said, of course. We said, would you get Spielberg and Sumner or Jeffrey Katzenberg and Sumner Redstone to be the chairman? And he said, okay. And he picked up the phone and did it. So it's a matter of, I think, slowing down and taking the time to really think big, hairy, audacious goal, a bahag, and then taking the little steps to implement it. And knowing that if you make the effort, anything is possible.
But you did numerous times. I just read in the book about King Hussein, where you got with the actor from Seinfeld. You dropped big names. He didn't pay attention when you mentioned Seinfeld.
So after, it was quite comical. After King Hussein died, there was a reception in Washington with King Abdullah to introduce him to the Washington political elite. And I was able to get myself into the reception. And I went over to King Abdullah. I said, welcome. I've worked with your father, King Hussein of blessed memory. And I brought Lady Margaret Thatcher to the palace together with Larry King. And I brought Senator John Kerry. And I brought Senator Biden, who was chairman of the Foreign Relations Committee. And he kind of looked at me and said, yes, Rabbi. Very nice, Rabbi. Yes, Rabbi. Very nice. And I saw I was not getting in anywhere. I was just bouncing off. I was just another person trying to get his attention. And then I said, oh, by the way, this summer, we're bringing Michael Richards from Seinfeld to the palace. And suddenly his whole face lit up. And the princess, his wife, was standing beside him. And he turned and said, look, honey, they're bringing Michael Richards, Kramer from Seinfeld. And he said, oh, my goodness, we're going to have to grease the doors. And he pulled the door open the way Kramer would pull the door open always into Jerry's room, into Jerry's apartment. And he said, oh, this is so exciting. I realized it was a new generation in the palace. Right? And it was really quite fascinating because when we showed up, normally we met with King Hussein in Amman, and he would sit there in his Brooks Brothers suit at a table, and he'd have two advisors beside him, and everything was very formal. King Abdullah contacted us and said, I'm going to be in the summer palace in the south. Could you come there instead? So we said, okay. So we showed up expecting a whole formal presentation. He's sitting there in Dockers, in a jersey, right? And unfortunately, Michael Richards wasn't able to come in the end. And I explained to him, I said, unfortunately, he wasn't able to come. And he said, oh, my goodness, Rabbi, we had run around getting all the doors ready so we could open them for him.
That's funny. So did you ever consider making that a business? Just making these big events, corporate events, and getting together some of the biggest names, whether it's in politics or showbiz?
But actually, in the end, where I was able to actually generate revenue was that I was hired by several different oligarchs, Jewish oligarchs, who wanted to become better known in the United States and build their connections and relationships. And they hired me to do that. So I was really quite blessed in terms of all the relationships that I had made in my working with Larry King and with Aish HaTorah, where I had brought many different world leaders on trips to Israel. And in the end, it did turn out to be a business that generated the money that I made. And oligarchs would hire me to start organizations for them. I started some of the Global Conference for Christians, Muslims, and Jews for a group of oligarchs from Kazakhstan. And then for some oligarchs from Ukraine, I started the Global Foundation for Democracy. And I was able to bring in the relationships, whether it was Vice President Gore or Secretary of Homeland Security Tom Ridge or Attorney General John Ashcroft, people who I had brought on trips to Israel through my relationship with Larry King. I was then able to work with and connect them with various Jewish oligarchs.
I see some of them gave haskamas, gave approbations for your book too, as well. You tell a great story in the book about one of the oligarchs. I think it was Ukraine, maybe it was Russia. I think it was
Vadim
Ukraine,
Rabinovich.
where he decided to do the deal by putting a piece of paper in a book. Tell us about what happened. I was intrigued by that. It sounded like he's almost like was a Chabadnik.
There are a lot of things I learned from him. I'll tell you about that one in a second. But one is, we were on his private plane flying to Moscow, and I see him take out a stopwatch, and he hits the stopwatch and he starts learning one of his sefers, a Jewish book. I think it might have been Pirkei Avos, Ethics of the Fathers. And then his wife asks him a question and he hits the stopwatch. He speaks to her. She's finished. He hits the stopwatch. And I'm watching him do this for like 20 minutes. And I finally say, Vadim, what is going on? And he said, I made a commitment to my teacher, my rabbi, that I would learn a minimum of 1 hour a day. Right? That if I made that effort, then I'm asking God to make his efforts to help me with my business. But I see that I'm kind of ADD. It's hard for me to sit. I can do 5 minutes and then I speak to my wife. I can do 10 minutes and then I take a phone call. I can do 5 minutes and then I do an email. So to make myself real with my commitment for an hour a day of learning, I use the stopwatch and I click on and off, and then till I see that I hit an hour. When I went back after I left that trip, I went and I did my learning in the morning, and at a kollel, I showed up with a stopwatch, and everyone said, "What are you doing, Katsof?" I explained the story to them, and then I brought stopwatches for everyone in the kollel, and everyone started doing it. But he really believed that God was involved in his business, and we were looking at trying to start the Global Foundation for Democracy to do a big conference. And one of the big oligarchs from Kazakhstan backed out or was waffling. And he said, I'm going to make a decision, I'm going to use the Chumash, our Torah, to make a decision if I should go forward. And he took the book and he opened up this Chumash and he said, put his finger down on the line without looking at it. And he said, okay, we go ahead. And I said, what the heck are you talking about? I had never seen anyone do this. So he said, well, it's a verse about Pesach. And Pesach is the springtime. We wanted to do this conference in springtime. And it's saying that they set up the festival for Pesach and Aviv in spring. So it's telling us we should proceed. And he took on like a $2 million obligation to go ahead with it.
So that's a great story. Was there ever a point in time where you were disappointed in the fact that you weren't able to make the big monies? I know you were planning the house and the swimming pools and everything else. You're looking to get the fancy cars. Was there ever a point that you became bitter towards God and religion?
Of course. There are times that I had to struggle and say, why is this happening? Why are things collapsing? I owed the banks, I owed the credit cards, I owed family members, I owed friends. So there was a lot of anger, and I think that's okay. I think I think when you repress a feeling, you say, I'm not allowed. I think part of being Jewish is being in struggle with God and crying out, why is this happening? Why am I suffering? But it's stopping and saying, what's the lesson for me? And I learned that it's not all me. I need to include God in my plans. I need to be responsible with the money I'm raising. There are times that suddenly I made money and instead of having one car, I had 3 cars. I didn't need 3 cars. I didn't need an Audi S8 450 horsepower, the only one in Rockland County. I got carried away. So I think.
But when you made big money, how much big money did you make at that time?
I don't remember, but it's not enough to own an S8 450 horsepower car. But I borrowed. I went in debt. So
and you're still paying off some of that debt, as you said.
Right. So it was learning that everything has to be appropriate and in the right way. And to continue and that there's more, you can be, just because I have money, it didn't make me happy. I realized that there were more important values in life, that I was working on building my resume, I like to say, instead of my eulogy. The resume is what everyone's going to say about me after, and how great I am, and how many famous people I knew, and versus the eulogy is the quiet things. Was I a good husband, a good father, a good grandfather, good friend? Did I, give charitably? And those are the things that in my life now I feel bring me real wealth.
So have
It's
you
nice to
given
be
up?
rich.
Have you given up the quest for make big money? Is that still on the horizon? If you just say, God, I want another opportunity to bite at the apple.
There, a gentleman named Louis Katz, who's a very, very wealthy individual, lived in New Jersey. There's a big plaque up about him at the Newark airport. He was a part owner of the New York Mets and of the Madison Square Garden. He was unfortunately killed maybe 7-8 years ago when his Gulfstream jet went off the end of a runway in Philadelphia. And a very, very special man. And I was telling him about all my business deals. He was one of the owners of Kinney Parking. And he said, Irwin, and he was worth hundreds of millions of dollars. And he said, I never stepped up to the plate to try and hit a home run. I just went and tried to hit singles. I started parking cars at Kinney, and then I became a manager of one lot, and then I became a manager of 3 lots. And then I realized this is a business, so I bought one, and then I bought a second. I slowly built it, but I never went up to the plate to try and hit a home run. He said, stop doing that. Just try and get on base.
Did you
If you're
listen
on
to him?
base, what?
Did you listen to him?
I did. That changed my approach. So now I'm happy. You know what? In life, not everything is a grand slam, bottom of the 9th, 2 outs out, last game of the 7th game of the World Series. It doesn't work that way. Maybe you'll hit 1 home run in your life, 1 grand slam. Be happy to get on base. And then you let God take it from there. That's my approach now.
Now, since you worked with Steven Spielberg and a lot of Hollywood types, any plans to having your book being made into a movie?
I'd love it, but
Have you approached Steven Spielberg or anybody else in Hollywood? Am I implanting an idea in your mind?
that now, yeah. See, there's the desire, the time that still comes in. Oh my!
But you have the Hollywood connections, right? You can say this could be a great book.
I think so, but I'd like to just get more people to read it. And I think there's a lot of beautiful wisdom in it and insight, and I'm very vulnerable with my struggles, and I think that's what makes it a good book.
Rabbi Irwin Katsof is our guest, formerly with Aish HaTorah, where he was a fundraiser for 20 years. Then he decided to want to make millions upon millions of dollars. His book is called Living Dangerously, My Struggle to Get Rich Without Losing My Soul. What's your next book going to be about?
I'm not sure I want to do one, but I've been thinking about a book on aging. I think just the general wisdom on how to approach aging gracefully and incorporating Jewish wisdom. But I don't know that I'm going to do that. I think I'm happy just being a father, husband, grandfather.
But you're still working, right? You're still,
yeah, of course.
You have another company right now that you're the president of, which is called trademissions.org. So you're looking to make deals still.
I assist alternative asset fund managers, venture capital, private equity, real estate, public equities. I assist them in raising capital. But I try and I start my day with an hour at least of reflection, meditation. I run every day. I mean, I've really balanced out my life.
With a stopwatch?
No.
Anyway,
even I don't follow all the lessons I learned.
Anyway, thank you for joining. I'm looking forward to having you back again. And I'm
thank you so much.
I'm looking forward to the movie.
Thank you. I like your thinking big. It's a bahag. Thank you so much. Have a wonderful day.
Rabbi Irwin Katsof, thank you for joining us. Look forward to having you back again.
Great. Bye.
And I'll be back with some closing thoughts right after these messages. So don't go away. Stay tuned.